Well, I'm joined now by Avi Melamed. He's a strategic intelligence analyst, a former Israeli intelligence official, and former advisor to the Israeli government on Arab affairs. It's good to have you with us. We have a lot of things that we can't confirm right now. Israel says that it killed 3 militants in Gaza. One of them likely was Sinwar. What's your read on this?
Well, according to the incoming reports, apparently it is Sinwar. We are still waiting, of course, a final confirmation, but currently, at least, it seems like it was indeed Sinwar that was eliminated, and with him, some other senior commanders of the Hamas in Gaza Strip.
What difference would it make to the war, to the conflict, if he indeed is dead?
Well, the estimation currently is it may, and I hope that will be the direction, it may encourage or accelerate a process that will result in a deal to bring back the Israeli hostages and actually to end the war in Gaza. But for the time being, it's kind of like an open question. We have to see how things will evolve. The other thing which I think is very significant is to see what will be the ramifications in the context of the inner Palestinian discussion vis-a-vis the role of Hamas down the road within the Palestinian political system.
I want to talk about that in just a moment of where we will go from here. But let me ask you about what we do know. Tell us more about Yahya Sinwar. What does he represent to Israel, and what does he represent to the Palestinians?
Yahya Sinwar is originally from Gaza, of course. He was building himself as a leader within the movement for many years. He's known to be a very brutal person. Some people even describe him as a psychopath. He was imprisoned in Israel for many years. He personally was involved in executing people accused by Hamas to be collaborators. He was the one leading all those years the very tough line within Hamas, basically building its military capacities. And the wider context of that is that within Hamas, there has been, for the last decade or so, since Hamas took over Gaza Strip in 2007, there has been an ongoing tension within Hamas between a camp that is a tough, hawkish camp that Sinwar was one of its most, if not its most well-known representative, and a pragmatic camp that actually argued at the time for Hamas now is right to prioritize pragmatism over its long-term ideological objectives. The bottom line of this power struggle was that Sinwar was able to dictate its will, and actually what he has been doing was to build Hamas military capacity as part of his vision to continue the armed struggle against Israel and actually to eliminate Israel by the use of force. He didn't conceal his intention, but he was very skillfully, unfortunately, was able to tailor the October 7 attack for a long period of time, misleading actually the Israeli intelligence.
So if he is now out of the power equation, what will that mean for where we are in this war? I mean, does his death, does it bring us closer to the end of this war? How do you read that?
Well, I want to be cautious about it. I would say something like that. Hamas, Sinwar, as long as he was the one in power, has basically was a major obstacle for ending this war because of two major reasons. One, Sinwar constantly basically refused to move ahead with the issues of the hostages for different reasons. In the bottom line, in that context, he didn't really have an interest or incentive to sign a deal that will release the hostages. The other thing in that regard is that as long as Sinwar was in power or viewed to be as still in power in Gaza Strip, he was able to continue and to, I would say, threat or intimidate factors in Gaza Strip who were kind of like contemplating the possibility to replace Sinwar or to basically move towards some sort of like an agreement with Israel. So it will be very interesting to see in both aspects what will be the ramification following the elimination or what seems to be like the elimination of Sinwar.
Does it make a rescue of the remaining hostages more likely, in your opinion, if Sinwar is dead?
Well, I think there is a major question that we have to explore, and that is the question, who exactly controlled the situation of the hostages in Gaza Strip? Because it's very possible that these hostages are scattered in different places, in different locations. There may be no one Hamas single factor that controls all the information and the whereabouts and the situation of the hostages. In fact, we do know, based upon the previous experience that hostages were held in a different locations, sometimes totally separated from one place to another, sometimes in a civil apartments, sometimes they were found, unfortunately, under the ground in tunnels. So the question, for example, is there anyone in Gaza Strip that actually holds the key, sort of speaking, to bring back all the hostages as one, as part of an agreement or an arrangement?
Do you think it's possible? I know this is speculation, but is it possible that Sinwar was not in control, total control of the fate of these hostages? Is it possible we're about to learn that the hostages and their whereabouts and their future was being decided by someone other than Sinwar?
It's very possible. We have to take into consideration there is a war going on in Gaza Strip since October 7th. Sinwar most of the time was busy in hiding and running away, basically taking more and more cautious precautions to protect himself from a potential Israeli infiltration. There was an estimation within the Israeli intelligence agencies that Sinwar was surrounding himself with some of the hostages, and recent information coming in indicated indeed the 6 hostages that were recently executed by Hamas in the tunnel, Sinwar was there. There are some evidence that supports that thing. But in the end of the day, I don't want to say necessarily that Sinwar had a full control over the situation of all the hostages in Gaza Strip. But it doesn't really matter in the sense that in the end of the day, Israel's objective, of course, is to bring back all the hostages. And right now, as we know, based upon intelligence estimations, unfortunately, a considerable number of these hostages are not alive, while the rest who are still alive are, of course, in a very bad condition.
Yeah. Former intelligence official Avi Melamed. Mr. Melamed, we appreciate your time and we appreciate your valuable insights on this breaking news event. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Good day.